The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. As always, be sure to subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify. You can also find us online by going to parentalcompass.org. It's getting to be summer. Yeah. Time to go outside. Time to have some fun. Time to enjoy the sun. But it also means a big uptick in child injuries. The thing with it is, though, a lot of those injuries can be prevented. Really simply prevented, too. Here to talk with me about it is Dr. Helen Chea. Helen has been a pediatrician for 6 years. She's also the medical director for Molina Healthcare. Let's talk about Molina Healthcare for a quick second. Molina has been a sponsor on this show and several projects that I've been a part of. They're there for people who are on Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare. They're making a difference. All right, put on your helmet because we're running into this full force. Preventable child injuries, Dr. Helen Chea. Let's go.
We commonly find that it's the teenagers that tend to opt out of wearing helmets and protective gear because it doesn't seem, they want to seem cool, right? So they're not always wearing them. And, older kids aren't always supervised. So it's important to have conversations with them about the real risks of injury and really emphasize that, staying safe is fun and it really is a cool thing to do.
I'm sure that will sound real cool coming from, us adults. But it makes me think about skateboarding culture too. If you rarely see people skateboarding, wearing helmets, and then skateboarding's all about learning better tricks and pushing yourself further. So it's almost like it's a very injury-prone type thing.
Right. And again, as with helmets in any sort of bike or skateboard or scooter, it's important to just emphasize with your kids, hey, it's important to wear your helmet. And sometimes they just kind of need, it's just kind of gentle guidance. Like, I love you, wear a helmet. And in terms of skateboarding too, it's important to also be sure your kids are aware of the environment that they're in, right? So, making sure that they're riding on smooth surfaces, not in wet weather, and that they know what they're capable of, and they're, not doing tricks or anything outside of their ability.
Yeah, being aware.
So really being aware of your surroundings, I think a big thing.
It seems like there's this correlation where oftentimes the more fun something is, the more dangerous it can be. And that particularly makes me think about trampolines, where kids love jumping on trampolines, but I hear they're one of the most dangerous things, right?
Right. So pediatricians, we are not fans of trampolines because of the injuries we've seen, but we understand why people use them. They're fun, right? Like, as a kid, I grew up, using a small trampoline too. And it's just, especially during the summertime when you're outside, it's a fun activity.
Yeah.
What we recommend is a few things. So, one, making sure that if you're using a trampoline, that the surroundings are safe. So setting the trampoline up over, soft, even ground instead of over cement or hard surfaces, making sure that the area around the trampoline is free of trees or fences or debris and other equipment. And with the larger trampolines, ideally setting up those high safety nets
Yeah.
To prevent kids from kind of bouncing off. And also avoid using old broken trampolines, and following the guidelines that are put in place by the trampoline manufacturers, including how many people, like the maximum number of people who should be on the trampoline at one time.
It makes me think of when I was young and we do like a little double jump thing where one person jumps and then they're up in the air and then the other person jumps and it kind of builds the momentum of two jumps. Do you have an opinion about that one way or the other, or is it just, you know?
With social media these days, especially YouTube, TikTok, I'm sure there are a lot of videos out there with people doing all sorts of cool tricks and jumps, and I would say supervising your kids, especially if they're young, and trying to and teaching them to avoid potentially dangerous activities or tricks. Like kids should be able to enjoy healthy play that's within their scope of skill and ability.
Yeah.
With the double jump that you mentioned, I've seen videos of it. Very dangerous, right? Because you're going really high, and also a lot of trampoline injuries actually occur because there's multiple people on the trampoline. They're
like
running into each other. Right. They're jumping on each other. So really, you supervising your kids, teaching them what's safe, what isn't safe, is really the recommendation.
Yeah. Well, another thing I've heard, which doesn't seem like it would just be top of your head type thing, but that more children are falling out of second story or higher windows during these summer months. Why is that?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I think parents tend not to think about.
Yeah.
Because they're windows, right? So what's happening is that warmer weather means more open windows. And yes, we do see an increase in the number of injuries from children accidentally falling out of windows. Sometimes they'll, be curious, they'll look out the window and fall because there's no screen, or even if there is a screen, they're leaning against it and putting weight on the screen. And, know that window screens keep bugs out, but don't keep kids in. Window screens are not meant to hold weight. So that's something that's important to remember. Families can avoid these injuries by making sure they're supervising their kids if they're around windows that are above ground level. And I would say any window that's above, like 6 feet. Don't put any furniture under windows or anything that kids can climb up. And if you I understand, when the weather is getting really hot and you want the windows open, you can install you can install commercial devices on windows that either keep the windows from opening past a certain distance, or there are window guards that are just kind of that go on the lower part of the window and keep kids from pushing against the screen.
Yeah. It seems just like a really tragic thing that could happen, or it makes me think of that Eric Clapton song where that happened to his child.
Right. Windows can be dangerous, and it's I think that's one of the dangers that we tend not to think about as parents.
Yeah. Another thing that seems different, or that you wouldn't think of off the top of your head, is drowning. A lot of kids are going to pools, and in movies, drowning seems to always be depicted as this like help, like splashing around, like big thing. But in reality, drowning is a lot more quiet than that, right? Or what does that look like?
Right. So most people, you're right, do have a misconception that drowning is very obvious. They may look for signs that aren't there. So they'll assume that, a person should be screaming or flailing their arms, if they're in danger. But that in reality, that's not always the case. Drowning tends to occur pretty quietly. So parents should be mindful of silence. If, watch your kids when they're in the pool, keep your eyes on them. Don't expect that you can hear them, that you'd be able to hear them if something went wrong.
Yeah.
So when people are drowning, they may not be yelling because they're trying to gasp for air, right? And so look for things like faces of panic or fear, act right away. A child's head is tilted back, which could mean that they're, trying to avoid breathing in water, or obviously if they're face down. But the most important thing when kids are around water, even if they know how to swim, is to make sure that there's always, an adult keeping their eye on them. Kids can, they can be bobbing up and down, but then they can get tired or have a cramp and may need help getting out.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a running theme through a lot of your answers just seems to be awareness, like
Right.
the children having awareness of themselves and their limitations and what's safe and what's not, and then the parents having awareness of the surroundings and what their children are doing, things like that.
Right. Yeah, we don't expect, parents to be watching their kids every second of every day. So, it's important to teach them about what's safe, what isn't safe, and what to do in case they're in a dangerous situation.
Yeah. Well, going back to swimming a little bit, I remember as a kid wearing these little arm floaty things, like as a really little kid. But,
Right.
We've talked before and you're not a fan of these things. Why is that?
Right. So, in terms of flotation devices, if kids are going to be around bodies of water, they should wear life vests. That goes without saying. In terms of inflatable flotation devices, that's where things can get a little bit slippery. The ones that you blow up and fill with air, like the water wings, I think is what we commonly think about.
Okay.
They can accidentally deflate, and parents sometimes rely on those flotation devices a bit too much. But they may not be the most sturdy. And the other thing that many swim instructors will advise about flotation devices is that they can give children a false sense of security when they go into the water. It makes them think that they can just jump in and they'll float, they'll stay afloat. So it's really best to teach kids how to swim or enroll them in swim lessons. That's really, it's a life skill. It's a great recreational activity, but it can really save their life someday.
It is a life skill, and I feel like it's a shame in a way that it's almost like a privileged life skill. Like if you can afford to go to swim lessons, then you'll be able to do this. But if you didn't do it as a child, then you're more susceptible to drowning, and it seems like less people learn as adults. Are there any workarounds or programs or anything that makes swim lessons more accessible?
So yes, and that's a good point. Swim lessons, yes, can be expensive. You don't have to enroll your child in private lessons. There are organizations that offer swimming lessons at discount for low-income families. I would say that getting in touch with your local YMCA is a good place to start. Most YMCAs have pools, and they do have programs and options that allow for affordable swim lessons. And swim lessons are for everyone, right? Babies, kids, teenagers, and adults. So you can take swim lessons at any point in your life, and to keep yourself and others safe.
It's amazing that even babies can swim a little. Like that's pretty impressive.
Right, they can. Yes, babies can learn how to swim. There are special types of lessons for infants that will teach them how to roll over on their backs in case they fall into water. So yes, any age swimming is appropriate for swim lessons are appropriate for any age.
Totally. Another thing I think being out by the water is sunburns, and you go out to the beach for a few hours, the sun can get you. How severe is it though? Because I've had some bad sunburns in my life or seen bad sunburns, but it wasn't really a medical situation, like it hurt. But can it get worse, or what should people know about sunburns?
People are learning more about the importance of wearing sunscreen these days. I know that when I was young, I didn't oftentimes wear sunscreen when I went outside. People are more cognizant now. It's important for both kids and adults to wear sunscreen, especially if they're going to be exposed directly to the sun, which, oftentimes you are in the summertime. Short-term sunscreen helps to prevent sunburn, which can be uncomfortable, right? But long-term, it can help to prevent skin cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something to think about too, the skin cancer factor.
Right. So, oftentimes people only think about putting on sunscreen when it's, really sunny outside, and they may skip it on cloudy days, but it's important to remember that up to 80% of UV rays can pass through clouds. So it's important to use sunscreen, during the day, in the summertime. The American Academy of Dermatology recommends at least a sun protection factor or SPF of 30. And then remembering to, reapply if your kids are going to be swimming or, partaking in any activities where they're going to sweat a lot. So usually applying every 2 hours is the recommendation.
Yeah. Another thing I think about with these months is 4th of July and fireworks. A lot of people love fireworks, but I'm assuming they're dangerous or it's a big issue. Do you see a lot of firework injuries out there?
Yes. So definitely summertime, especially on the 4th of July. We see injuries in kids and adults. Some pretty serious injuries too, right? Because some of these fireworks are, give off huge explosions. So fireworks are always dangerous and can lead to serious injury for children and adults. There are steps you can take to, try to reduce the risks because I know, it's a family activity. People like to set off fireworks. I definitely enjoyed watching them when I was younger. But first, make sure that fireworks are legal, are legally allowed wherever you live. And only an adult should be having the fireworks. Make sure, make sure kids are far away, that they're not touching them, not lighting them.
Well, and kids like fireworks too, or it's like they'll get their hands on them.
Right.
I had a friend in high school, and I went away to college and came back, and he was severely injured from fireworks, and it was just such a shock of wow, whoa. I never even considered how bad they could be. But
right.
I mean, that's real. It's a little explosive. So, yeah. What about if you have a firework and it doesn't go off properly and it's in the street and maybe it was an illegal firework that you shouldn't have? Because then I think what do you do?
Do not try to relight a dud firework. So that, a dud firework is one that you've kind of lit and then it doesn't go off. That's actually how a lot of severe hand injuries happen. As you can imagine, right? Someone lights it, it doesn't go off, and they go to pick it up, and of course, then it explodes.
Yeah.
So with these dud fireworks, stand back for a while in case it does go off. If it doesn't, douse it with water, either from a hose or a bucket. And having access to water when you're using fireworks is always a good idea, right? So douse it with water.
Keep a bucket by.
Right. Keep a bucket there. Wait a while, and if there's no set time, but you just kind of wait and stand back and don't get near it. And once it's wet, you can dispose of it. Kids do find these fireworks sometimes. If you're out walking, it's after the 4th of July, for example, and you come upon some fireworks and you don't know if they're just the shells or if they're intact fireworks. It's always best to contact your local authorities, immediately for safe disposal.
Well, this all seems really relevant. Maybe you're saving lives with these words. Do you have any closing thoughts or ideas that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah. So, we are in unprecedented times, right? This, with COVID, with the COVID pandemic, and now, luckily vaccinations underway. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to going out and spending more time outdoors with their families, especially as the weather gets nicer. I know that after being cooped up, at home for over a year, I'm really looking forward to it. We would just, as pediatricians, would just say, as you enjoy time with your kids, keep in mind, important preventative and precautionary measures to ensure that your kids are are safe and healthy.
We want to be able to enjoy these activities.
Right. We do the best we can, right? We can't always be there for our kids, but we can teach them to be safe.
Encourage them to be thoughtful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. This was great.
Yeah, no problem. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Dr. Helen Chea. We've all made it through this awful COVID year. It's time to get out and have some fun. Responsibly, though. Don't hit your head. That's our show. Big thank you to Family Education and Support Services. Big thank you to Molina Healthcare. My name is Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week. Peace.